I swear, if that smug bastard had said one more word, I would have rearranged his smile into something Picasso would have painted. We were at a dinner I didn't even want, my wife insisted. She said we needed a serious talk. Serious talk, my foot. It was an ambush. I walked into the restaurant, and there she was, Ashley, my wife, laughing a little too hard at her colleague's joke. Colleague, right? Chase Donovan. I'd heard the name too many times over the last year, usually followed by her sighing about how inspiring he was. The guy sat there in a tight black shirt, smirk glued to his face like he'd been born with it. Logan, she said sweetly, motioning to the chair across from them. This is Chase. I've told you about him. Yeah, I'd heard. The mentor. The genius. The guy who just gets her. I sat down, forced to smile, but my fists were already clenching under the tablecloth. Then Chase leaned in, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, let's make this simple. You've got two options. Leave quietly, or face me like a man. Ashley didn't flinch. She smiled. My ears started ringing. The whole restaurant faded out. He really thought I'd crawl, that I'd nod, shuffle off, and let him play house with my wife while I went home to cry into a frozen pizza. I smiled back. You want your teeth whole, or in pieces? He didn't smirk after that. I stood, shoved the table aside. Plates shattered, wine spilled across Ashley's white dress like war paint. Security rushed in, voices shouted, but I barely heard a thing. By the time I was pulled away, Chase was still on the ground wheezing, his alpha act leaking onto the marble floor. Ashley didn't even look at him. She looked at me. Logan, stop. You're embarrassing me. Embarrassing her. That's what this was about. Not the fact she'd paraded me into a restaurant to watch me get humiliated in front of her shiny new toy. Not that she'd gutted our marriage under candlelight. No, it was about her image. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't the beginning of her affair. This was the final act. When I got home later, my knuckles sore, the house smelled like her perfume. Only not just hers. Something musky. Male. Arrogant. That was the night I stopped being her husband and started being her biggest mistake. The next morning, Ashley acted like nothing had happened. She was in the kitchen, pouring almond milk into her coffee like she hadn't just set fire to our marriage in front of half a steakhouse. You overreacted, she said casually, without looking at me. You made a scene. That's not attractive, Logan. I leaned against the counter, watching her stir. Not attractive? I repeated slowly. He threatened me. You smiled. She finally looked up, eyebrows raised, like I was the unreasonable one. You're always so dramatic. Chase was just setting boundaries. Boundaries. That was her word for it. I didn't answer. Just sipped my own coffee, letting her think I'd swallowed the excuse whole. But inside, I was cataloging every word, every glance, every nervous twitch. She tried to soften her tone. Look, I'm not saying I don't love you. I just feel like we've grown apart. You don't make me laugh anymore. You don't excite me. I nodded slowly. So Chase does. She flinched. A tiny thing, barely noticeable. But I noticed. I always notice. You're twisting my words, she said quickly. Then she grabbed her bag, kissed me on the cheek like we were in a toothpaste commercial, and left. Here's the funny thing about betrayal. It doesn't always roar in like a storm. Sometimes it slides in quietly, wearing your wife's perfume, humming to itself while it makes coffee. That day, I didn't go to work. I stayed home, checked her laptop, her email, her phone records. I didn't find the smoking gun. Not yet, but I found something better. Patterns. Deleted messages. Odd charges on the credit card. A hotel in town she had no reason to be at. So I waited. Patient. Calm. Because if Ashley thought I'd just keep playing the part of the clueless husband while she rehearsed her new life with Chase, she'd miscast me. That evening, when she came home smiling from her meeting, I greeted her with a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. She looked surprised. Relieved, even. You're not mad anymore? She asked. No, I said smoothly. I understand now. She smiled, thinking she'd won. And that's when I knew the game had officially started. The next few days, I played it cool. Too cool. Ashley started acting sweeter, like she thought her little incident was already fading from memory. She made my favorite dinner on Wednesday. She actually laughed at one of my dumb jokes on Thursday. By Friday, she was humming in the kitchen, phone face down on the counter like it was just another appliance. But I wasn't fooled, because I'd already mirrored her phone. Yeah, she had no idea that while she was busy deleting texts and calls, Every last one was showing up in real time on mine. And that's how I met Chase Donovan, the unedited version. The man texted like a teenager. Last night was fire. Can't stop thinking about you. Did he suspect anything? You deserve better than boring old Logan. Boring old Logan. That was my nickname, apparently. I almost laughed. If only Chase knew how not boring I was about to get. That night, Ashley climbed into bed next to me, kissed my shoulder, and whispered, "I love you." I stared at the ceiling and whispered back, "I know." The next morning, I made my move. I left my laptop open on the kitchen table, with a little surprise waiting in plain sight. An anonymous email account logged in. Draft folder open, containing a half-written message to Chase. She doesn't know I'm watching, but I do. Every word, every lie. See you soon. I didn't send it. I didn't even sign it. I just left it sitting there. When Ashley came down for her coffee, she glanced at the screen. I watched her freeze for a half second before casually reaching for her mug like nothing was wrong. But her hand shook. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Fine," she said quickly. "Just busy day ahead." She left 5 minutes later. Didn't even touch her coffee. That was when I knew I'd rattled her cage. And the best part? She had no clue just how far I was willing to go. If marriage is a chess game, then I'd just moved my queen into position. Ashley didn't know it yet, but she was 3 turns away from checkmate. The next week was a masterclass in acting. I was all smiles, calm conversations, and casual touches that made her think I was still her Logan. The guy who folded laundry without complaint. The guy who sent her silly memes during work hours. And she played along. "Oh, you're in a good mood lately," she said one night, sipping her wine. "Why wouldn't I be?" I answered smoothly. "I've got everything I need." She smiled, relieved. But her eyes darted to her phone every 30 seconds like it was a life raft in a storm. See, I already knew Chase had backed off a little. My little draft message had done the trick. He hadn't texted her all day. And if you've ever seen a liar without their favorite audience, you know the look. She wasn't just restless. She was twitching. That's when I turned the screws. The hotel bill. On Thursday, I printed out a copy of a hotel receipt I'd pulled from her email trash folder. She thought she'd deleted it. Rookie mistake. It was from a business meeting at the Glenwood Inn, the kind of place you book by the hour, not the night. I slid it into a plain white envelope and left it on the passenger seat of her car. No note. No explanation. Just the bill. She found it the next morning. I knew because she came back inside, cheeks pale, clutching the envelope like it was radioactive. "Logan," she said, voice trembling just slightly. "Did you put this in my car?" I looked up from my coffee and frowned, like I had no idea what she was talking about. "Put what?" "This," she snapped, tossing the envelope on the table. I picked it up, studied the receipt with a perfectly measured confusion, then raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Where'd you get this?" Her mouth opened, closed. She stared at me, searching my face for a crack, a hint that I knew more than I was letting on. Finally, she said, I don't know. Someone must be trying to mess with us." "Us?" I repeated softly. "Yes," she insisted. Too quickly. "Someone jealous. Or maybe a scam. You know? People do this kind of thing." I slid the receipt back across the table and took another sip of coffee. "Then we'll just ignore it." That was it. No accusations. No drama. Just calm acceptance. And that, right there, scared her more than any screaming match ever could. The dinner party. By Saturday, Ashley was walking on eggshells. Smiling too much, laughing at things that weren't funny, touching my arm like she wanted to remind herself I was still her safe choice. So, naturally, I invited friends over for dinner. Couples we both knew. The kind who loved small talk and wine pairings. Ashley dressed to kill, poured the drinks, told her usual stories. She was radiant, charming, convincing to them, but not to me, because every time I caught her eye, she flinched just a fraction too late. During dessert, one of our friends, Mark, asked, "So, Ashley, how's work going? Still working closely with that Chase guy you mentioned?" She froze for half a beat before forcing a laugh. "Oh, Chase? Yeah, he's around. Great team player." I leaned in, smiling. "Yeah, he and Ashley spend a lot of time together. Almost like family." The room chuckled politely. Ashley's fork clinked against her plate. After our guests left, she rounded on me in the kitchen. "Why would you say that?" "Say what?" I asked, rinsing a glass. "About Chase. You made it sound weird." I turned, drying my hands on a towel. Did I? I thought I was just complimenting your work ethic. Her jaw tightened. You're trying to make me paranoid. I stepped closer, lowered my voice. Ashley, if you're feeling paranoid, that's not me. That's your conscience. She didn't respond, just grabbed her phone and disappeared into the bedroom. And I knew exactly who she was texting. Chase Cracks. The messages came in at 11:14 p.m. From Chase, of course. What did you tell him? He's messing with us. This isn't safe anymore. I can't risk my job. We need to cool off for a while. Her response was frantic. I didn't say anything. He doesn't know. He's just being himself. Please don't ghost me. I saved every word. Screenshots, backed up twice. Then, for the first time, I texted Chase back from her phone. You're right. Let's not talk for a while. And then I deleted the thread. So the next morning, when Ashley looked at her phone and saw nothing from him, she looked like a gambler staring at an empty slot machine. Desperate. Drained. She glanced at me over her coffee. You seem happy lately. I smiled. I am. The invitation. That evening, I told her I'd made dinner reservations. A fancy place. The kind she used to beg me to take her to. She lit up instantly, relief spilling across her face. Maybe, in her mind, this was the turning point. Maybe Chase had gone quiet because she'd chosen me again. We got dressed up. She wore the red dress she knew I loved. At the restaurant, she reached for my hand across the table. Logan, she said softly, I'm glad we're doing this. I know things have been complicated, but I want us to be okay. I squeezed her hand gently. So do I. She smiled. For the first time in weeks, she looked like the woman I married. That's when I pulled a small envelope from my jacket pocket and slid it across the table. Her smile faltered. What's this? Just a little surprise, I said warmly. She opened it. Inside wasn't jewelry or a love note or theater tickets. It was a printed transcript of her messages with Chase. Every word, every emoji. Her face drained of color. I leaned in, voice calm, almost gentle. Ashley, the thing about building your new life on lies is that eventually someone notices the cracks. She stared at me, speechless. I sat back, finished my wine, and smiled. Check. Ashley didn't say a word for the rest of that dinner. She just stared at those printed messages like they might catch fire and burn themselves to ash if she looked long enough. Me? I ate my steak. Medium rare. Delicious. When the waiter asked if we wanted dessert, I smiled and said, Oh, I think my wife's had enough surprises for one evening. She didn't laugh. Back in the car, silence stretched between us like a steel wire. She finally spoke, her voice brittle. You went through my phone? No, I said calmly, eyes on the road. I mirrored it. There's a difference. Her breath caught. That's invasive. I glanced at her, gave a half smile. So is another man's hand on my wife. She turned toward the window, muttering something about me being paranoid, controlling. Classic. The guilty always scramble for a label that makes them the victim. I let her rant. Because the truth was, I'd already won the first battle. She knew I knew. And from that moment on, she wasn't playing offense anymore, just scrambling on defense. Operation Pretend Husband. The next morning, Ashley put on her best step-forward wife routine. Pancakes, coffee, even a kiss on my cheek before I left for work. If you've ever seen a liar overcompensate, you know the look. She was desperate to convince me that everything was fine, and I played along. Thanks, honey, I said, taking the coffee. You're wonderful. Her eyes searched mine for sarcasm. Found none. I'd mastered the poker face. That night, I suggested we watch a movie together. She practically glowed with relief. She curled up against me on the couch, trying to pretend the world hadn't just shifted under her feet. Halfway through, she whispered, Logan, I love you. I kissed the top of her head. I know. And in that moment, I knew she believed it, or at least wanted to. Not because she felt love, but because she needed to feel safe. But here's the thing. I wasn't her safe place anymore. I was the storm she didn't see coming. Setting the stage. Revenge, you see, isn't about shouting matches or slamming doors. It's about patience, precision, making sure when the curtain finally falls, your target doesn't even realize they bought the ticket themselves. So I started laying groundwork. First, I casually mentioned to a few mutual friends that Ashley had been stressed from work and probably burning the candle at both ends. Just planting seeds. People notice when a story lines up later. Second, I started spending more time at the gym. Not because I cared about getting shredded, though it didn't hurt, but because it gave me a convenient, believable excuse to come home later than usual. Ashley, naturally, assumed I was giving her more freedom, and she used it. I knew because every time she thought I was lifting weights, Chase's name lit up her phone. The kicker? She didn't know Chase had started pulling away. He'd stopped sending the long messages. No more can't stop thinking about you. Just quick, flat responses. It wasn't love. It was logistics. And nothing eats a cheater alive faster than realizing their affair is less romance and more carpool scheduling. The confrontation that never came. A week later, Ashley finally broke. We were sitting at the kitchen table. She'd been staring at her phone for 20 minutes, not touching her food. Finally, she put it down and said, "Logan, are we okay?" I smiled warmly. "Of course we are." She blinked, thrown off by the ease of my answer. I feel like you don't trust me." "Why wouldn't I?" I asked gently. "You've been wonderful lately." Her eyes shimmered, and for a moment, I thought she might actually cry. But not out of guilt, out of fear, because she knew I had the power to ruin her. And the more I acted like I wouldn't, the more terrifying that became. The business card. That Friday, I left a small white card on her nightstand. A private investigator's business card. No explanation, just the card. When she saw it, she paled. "What's this?" "Just a contact I met at the gym," I said casually. "Nice guy?" Said if I ever needed clarity in life, he'd be happy to help. Her voice shook. "Did you hire him?" I smiled faintly. "Not yet." She stared at me, searching for a crack. There wasn't one. That night, she didn't sleep. I know because I watched her through the reflection in the dresser mirror, tossing, turning, staring at the ceiling like a prisoner waiting for a verdict. The party invite. 2 weeks later, we got an invitation to a company gala. One of those cocktail dress, rented tuxedo evenings where the air smells like ambition and expensive cologne. Ashley insisted we go. "It'll be fun," she said too brightly. What she meant was, Chase will be there. I agreed immediately. Of course. Can't wait to meet all your coworkers. The night of the gala, she looked stunning. Red dress, hair perfect, smile rehearsed. She was radiant for everyone else. For me, she was transparent. The room was packed with laughter and clinking glasses. I made small talk, shook hands, complimented ties, all while keeping one eye on Ashley, who kept glancing toward the bar. And there he was, Chase Donovan, in a navy suit, drink in hand, eyes locked on her like I was invisible. She excused herself to say hi. I let her go, watched as she leaned in just a little too close, her smile a little too wide. I strolled over, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "Honey," I said cheerfully, handing her one. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your famous colleague?" Chase stiffened. Ashley forced a laugh. "Logan, this is Chase." "Chase, my husband." Chase offered a hand. I shook it firmly, leaned in just enough, and said quietly, "Pleasure." "I've heard everything." His smile faltered. Ashley nearly dropped her glass. I clinked mine against hers and grinned. Till honesty. After the gala, the car ride home was silent. Halfway there, Ashley finally whispered, "Logan, what are you doing?" I kept my eyes on the road. "Driving." "That's not what I mean." I glanced at her, calm as ever. "What do you mean, Ashley?" Her voice cracked. "You're scaring me." And that right there, was when I knew I'd flipped the board. Because it wasn't me she was scared of. It was herself. I didn't tell her that night what was coming. I didn't need to. The beauty of a well-set trap is that the prey eventually panics and jumps right into it. And Ashley? She was already standing on the edge. It's funny, people think revenge is about explosions, grand gestures, dramatic reveals. They're wrong. Real revenge is quiet, surgical, the kind you don't see until the walls are already built around you. Ashley didn't know it, but I'd been laying bricks for weeks. The social shift. The Monday after the gala, I started making subtle moves. I stopped by Ashley's office with lunch. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches and a smile. Her coworkers loved it. "Oh, Logan, you're so sweet." One of them cooed, eyeing the flowers I'd tucked into the bag. Ashley forced a laugh, her cheeks just a shade too pale. "Yeah, he's thoughtful." I made small talk with her boss, asked about the latest project, complimented the office decor. Within 15 minutes, I was the charming, supportive husband every colleague secretly compared their own partners to. And Ashley knew it. She could see the way people looked at me, not as the boring husband she painted me to be, but as the guy everyone wished they had waiting at home. That's the thing about cheaters. They count on their partner being invisible. I made sure I was anything but. Chase slips. Meanwhile, I kept an eye on Chase. His texts had slowed to a trickle, and the few that came through were cautious, almost nervous. We need to be careful. Last night was risky. Are you sure he doesn't suspect? I saved everyone. Ashley responded with desperate reassurances, little digital hugs to a man already halfway out the door. Logan doesn't know anything. He trusts me. You're the only one who makes me feel alive. The irony? I was reading those words while she sat across from me at dinner, asking if I wanted more potatoes. The paper trail. One night, while Ashley showered, I slipped her laptop into my briefcase. I didn't even need the password anymore. I'd already cloned the hard drive weeks earlier. Inside, I found exactly what I was hoping for. Emails from her personal account, deleted but not gone. Dinner reservations. Hotel bookings. A few love notes dressed up as meeting reminders. I compiled them neatly. Dates, times, locations. Like a prosecutor prepping for trial. But here's the kicker. I didn't plan to use them in a courtroom. I planned to use them in the court of public opinion, where Ashley's carefully curated image would be on trial. Planting the idea. That Friday, while we were having dinner, I dropped the first breadcrumb. Do you ever think about reputation? I asked casually, sipping my wine. Ashley froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Reputation? Yeah, I said, swirling the glass. How people see us. At work. With friends. Online. It's funny, isn't it? One little rumor can change everything. She laughed nervously. What are you getting at? I met her eyes. Calm. Even. Just that I hope people always see you the way I do. Wonderful. Loyal. Trustworthy. She swallowed hard. Didn't take another bite. The friend test. The next week, I called our friend Rachel, one of Ashley's closest confidants. The kind of woman who knew everyone's business and couldn't resist a good story. Hey, Rach, I said warmly. I think Ashley's been stressed. You've noticed, right? Oh, totally, Rachel said. She seems distracted. Yeah, I agreed. I just hope people don't get the wrong idea. You know how office gossip can be. There was a pause. What do you mean? Nothing, I said quickly. Forget I said anything. Of course, Rachel didn't forget. By the next day, half the social circle was watching Ashley just a little closer. Whispering. Noticing when she smiled at her phone. And Ashley? She felt the shift. The silent treatment. By midweek, she was unraveling. She hovered more. Asked if I loved her more often. Tried to pull me into spontaneous date nights. I gave her affection, but sparingly. Enough to keep her hooked. Never enough to make her feel secure. One evening, she finally broke. Logan, she said, sitting down beside me, eyes wide. Are we okay? I smiled gently. Of course. Why do you ask? You've been different. Different how? She hesitated. Like you're watching me. I laughed softly, leaned closer, and whispered. Ashley, if I were watching you, you'd know. Her face drained of color. Chase in retreat. A few days later, I intercepted a message from Chase that made me grin. I don't think we should do this anymore. It's too risky. Ashley responded instantly. Don't say that. Please. I need you. His reply was brutal. I can't. He knows something. I'm sorry. She stared at her phone for an hour, waiting for more. Nothing came. That night, she barely touched her dinner. When I asked if she was okay, she forced a smile and said, just tired. Tired. Sure. The letter. The following Saturday, I slid a sealed envelope under her pillow. Inside wasn't evidence. Not yet. Just a single piece of paper with one sentence typed in bold. I know everything. No signature. When she found it that night, she gasped. Logan, what is this? I feigned confusion. What's what? This letter, she snapped, shoving it toward me. I read it slowly, brow furrowed. Weird. Where'd you get this? In our bed. I handed it back calmly. Must be some kind of prank. Don't worry, I'll look into it. She stared at me, searching for a tell. There wasn't one. And that's when I knew I'd broken her. The breaking point. By the end of the month, Ashley was a shadow of herself. She jumped when her phone buzzed. She checked the locks twice before bed. She hovered in the kitchen like a ghost, waiting for me to say something. Anything. That confirmed how much I knew. But I didn't. I just smiled, kissed her cheek, went to work, came home, acted like the perfect husband. Until one night, when she finally whispered, Logan, please. Just tell me what you want. I smiled faintly, kissed her forehead, and said, patience. Here's the thing about cages. The door doesn't have to slam shut. Sometimes, the prisoner closes it themselves. And Ashley? She'd just turned the key. The morning after Ashley asked me what I wanted, I gave her an answer she didn't expect. I want us to start fresh, I said casually over coffee. New routines. More honesty. No secrets. Her eyes lit up. Relief, like a drowning woman spotting a lifeboat. Yes, she breathed. That's exactly what we need. And just like that, she leaned in, thinking she'd bought herself a second chance. But the thing about second chances? They only work if you deserve them. And Ashley didn't. That week, I encouraged her to plan a little dinner with our closest friends. It'll be good for us, I told her. Show everyone we're stronger than ever. She jumped at the idea. Bought a new dress. Cooked like Martha Stewart on a caffeine high. What she didn't know was that every single person invited had already heard whispers, little seeds I'd planted weeks earlier. Seeds that would bloom right on cue. The table was set beautifully. Candles. Wine. Ashley's perfect smile. Cheers, she said, raising her glass. To love, loyalty, and new beginnings. Everyone clinked glasses, smiled, nodded, and waited, because 5 minutes later, I excused myself to the study and came back holding a manila folder. Ashley, I said warmly, you forgot this in the car earlier. Her face drained the second she saw it. She knew what was inside before I even opened it. I laid the contents neatly on the table. Hotel receipts, printed texts, photos she didn't know had been saved. The room went silent. Rachel gasped. Mark muttered, "Oh my God." Ashley's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Logan, please. We can talk about this later." "No need," I said calmly, sipping my wine. "I think everyone here deserves honesty. You did toast to loyalty, after all." Her hands shook. "You don't have to do this." I leaned back, smiled faintly. "No, I don't. But I want to." The fallout was instant. Our friends didn't yell. They didn't scold. They just looked at her with the kind of quiet disappointment that burns more than any anger. Rachel finally spoke. "Ashley, how could you?" Ashley stammered, reaching for excuses, but every word tangled in her throat. I stood, calmly gathering the papers. "I'll leave you all to finish dessert. I've lost my appetite." As I walked out, Ashley scrambled after me. "Logan, wait, please." In the hallway, her voice cracked. "I can fix this. I'll end it with him. I'll do anything." I looked her dead in the eyes. "You already ended it, Ashley. You just don't realize it yet." And then I left her there, in a room full of people she couldn't lie to anymore. Here's the part no one saw coming. 2 days later, Ashley came home to an empty house. My things were gone. Bank accounts separated. Locks changed. On the kitchen counter was a neatly folded letter. No rage. No insults. Just one line. "You wanted freedom. Consider yourself free." Attached was a copy of the prenup she'd signed years ago, the one she'd laughed about at the time, calling it silly paperwork. Turns out, it wasn't silly at all, because hidden in the fine print was a clause that stripped her of nearly everything if she committed infidelity. I hadn't just won back my dignity. I'd walked away with the house, the savings, and the freedom she thought she wanted. Her freedom came at a cost. No home, no money, no chase. He'd already blocked her number. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't slam a single door. I just smiled, locked the gate behind me, and drove off into a future where Ashley was nothing more than a story. And not a love story. A warning. Checkmate.